Good. Namaste to all of you. Let's continue our account of this fundamental yoga text, the second of the big three ones, which we comment here in Agama. Years ago, Geranda Samhita. Now, this winter and this coming season, the Hatha Yoga Pradipika. Given the fact that such texts are a memento, a memoratory of yoga, they simply describe there are chapters where they describe some theory, some opinions, the order in which you should do some things, but there are also places where they describe. For example, Hatha Yoga Pradipika is not so powerful at this, but still it describes 16 asanas. And then there are one or two shlokas, sometimes even three shlokas, as you will see, where they take one asana and they describe it. And they describe it pathetically bad, because it's not supposed to make you understand exactly what to do from the writings, without a picture, or even better, without the help from a teacher who will show you all the details. But because of that, if we use two shlokas to describe 16 asanas, that gives us 32 shlokas of just describing one asana, and here is one more asana, and here is one more asana. And in the end, after we have gone through 20 such shlokas, you say, come on, man, it's like, it's in a certain way, it's dry, it's boring, it repeats certain things, or what. And that's why I'm advising you to be patient, because there will be parts of the text where techniques are just described. Those of you who are in Agama know a lot about these techniques, and you know a ton more details about it. Those of you who haven't done too much Hatha Yoga, you don't know, or you may have conflicting ideas about what is happening, about what is here and there. And what I'm trying to say is this: the purpose of me debating with you, explaining to you the Hatha Yoga Pradipika, is not to teach you Hatha Yoga. Hatha Yoga you learn in the Agama courses, with teachers in front of you who perform, So the purpose is not to teach. The purpose is to show you, to show to you the opinion of a traditional text, to see how things are presented in the tradition, to see what is different when you do yoga in a modern day course with a teacher. And we have already noticed when we looked in the first 5-6 asanas, which we did last week, that it's a mess. The Indian tradition is so mixed up and so messed up. When they describe what they call Dhanurasana, it could very well be something else. It could be Akarna Dhanurasana. It could be even the other way around. Instead of arching the body back, you could arch it forward, and then it would be Halasana, or something similar to Halasana. And therefore, that these asanas are explained very vaguely. And also the eternal problem in India is that India is a subcontinent. There used to be hundreds of millions of people living there, on thousands of kilometers east to west and north to south. Communication in the medieval times was almost inexistent. And because of this, the yoga branches and traditions, they developed very differently from one place to another. And all in all, what resulted is that what some people call Dhanurasana, some people called Halasana. And the list could continue endlessly. Therefore, two teachers, 500 kilometers from each other in India, they would live on two different continents, and their yoga would bear very different names. Therefore, today, in the 20th century, the Indian government has realized, has created some institutions, branches of the Technology Institute, branches of the medical, of the health ministry, which tried to put together all the asanas from all the parts of India, all the mudras, all the pranayamas, and to kind of create a national standard, but they did not manage. There is absolutely not one national standard until today in India. And that's why when we deal with this tradition, it's beautiful to read Hatha Yoga Pradipika to see If I had Hatha Yoga Pradipika in my hand, a good translation of it, and if I wouldn't have a teacher, what would I understand from it? Another thing which I consider even more valuable, because we are going to continue with a long list of asanas, maybe 10 asanas today. We'll finish all of them, I hope so, in tonight's session. And that finishes the asanas. Then next week we'll look into the pranayamas and so on and so forth. You are going to see the language, the atmosphere. No, you are going to read 10 asanas from here, and then I'm advising you to take a famous Hatha Yoga book from the West, Yoga Dipika of B.K.S. Iyengar, Light on Yoga. Dipika means light and Pradipika means little light. So he wrote a book bigger than Hatha Yoga Pradipika. Read 10 asanas, you will find nothing of what is said here. Nothing. Nothing. It's like 2 books written in 2 different countries from another planet. No? And it's like, why is that? Why are the modern yogis talking about alignment and joints and muscles, and they are not talking about yoga as in the Hatha Yoga Pradipika? Because these are the mother texts. Yoga is coming from here. And modern people practicing some monkey gymnastics, the guru of Iyengar, the notorious Krishnamacharya, it is known, there are books written on it today, that half of this yoga which is taught in Iyengar yoga and Ashtanga yoga and Vinyasa and power and so on, it's military exercises from the training manual for soldiers of the British Army. Krishnamacharya took that, he took a book of Swedish massage, and then he created a hocus pocus system of yoga, which today is called Iyengar, Ashtanga, and the others, in which more than half of it is not from here. It's not from the tradition. It's just gymnastics. No? In a similar way, even Paramahamsa Yogananda, he was wondering how he could put more muscle and tissue on his students in Ranchi. He had a little school and he was teaching Kriya Yoga, but the obsession of the Indians were that the British boys were eating beefsteaks and they had a lot of meat on their shoulders. They were muscular. And the Indian boys looked rickety. They looked skin and bones, and they had symptoms like they suffered from racketism, and they wanted the Indian boys to be like the British boys. Is that the glory of a civilization? That your young people look muscular like they are bodybuilders? That's how you measure it. What about Patanjali? How much muscles did Patanjali had on his thighs and on his shoulders? And all that, there is so much materialism in these modern cultures, and unfortunately yoga has been subjected to the same. Another trend which you will notice immediately is that Svatmarama, the author of this text, in the first 5-6 asanas, he just uses 1 shloka, 2 lines of text. He says, do this, this is Dhanurasana. Why do you teach it? Oh, I forgot to tell you what Dhanurasana can be used for. Your teacher will tell you. Then starting with the shloka number 26, where we start tonight, he starts consecrating 2 shlokas to each asana, like 1 shloka to tell you how to do it, and 1 shloka to try to tell you what it does. And this is already much more motivating than last week, than in the previous one, because that was just dryly describing some asanas, and the question was, and so what? Here, when they describe the effects, it's very motivating because you are going to see what they consider effects and the language which they use. And then in the last ones, which are consecrated to meditations, like for Siddhasana and Padmasana, they use 3, 4, 5 shlokas for 1 single technique, for 1 single asana, thus going in much more details, just 1 shloka plus or minus, and it makes so much difference. But the biggest difference is again not in the information. Padmasana here, the lotus pose, the famous lotus pose emblematic for yoga, is here maybe taught in 5 shlokas. If you'd bother to read the Agama texts on Padmasana or on Siddhasana, there you have 3 pages of text written. And it's written quite condensed. No, I did not spend time blah, 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 blahing on Siddhasana. And still, therefore, it's not because of the information. It's again because of the resonance. What do these people consider truly relevant, truly important? When they want to tell you, do Mayurasana, what will they find to say in 10, 12 words? How will they boil it down to 10 or 12 or 15 words? A shloka just telling you why Mayurasana is great. Therefore, follow more this energy, what it brings into your heart, the enthusiasm which it awakens in your heart, because all these asanas, or most of them at least, you can learn them into Agama. As people who study Agama already know, we are teaching in this school approximately 70 different asanas from Hatha Yoga. There are 84 classical asanas. Dhirendra Brahmachari teaches 108 asanas, including as one of them the sun salutations, so 107 asanas if you want to take it strictly. So it's not about the number, but in Agama we don't teach the asanas. For example, from the 32 asanas from Geranda Samhita, we teach 24 or 25. That's because the last 7 or 8 are extremely difficult. Only 1 in 100 of our students can perform Baddha Padmasana or other asana, Kukutasana or things like that. And a study in Hatha Yoga has shown to me, because I made the choice eventually, I could have easily asked people, please try to do this. I know it's very difficult. Try to do it. But actually, my experience has taught me that the efforts, the number of months and hours and years of trying hard to do that impossible almost asana, and in the end, when you succeed to do it, what you get out of it, the benefits that you get out of it, the ratio is very, very big. You have to do huge efforts, and in the end, the same effects, or 90% of the same effects, you get them with other asanas anyway. And therefore, it's simply not worth it. That's why here in Agama, when we come to the end of the Hatha Yoga programs, we tell to people there are a few other asanas which you find in the books and so on. They are extremely difficult. Their efficiency is not so great compared to the others. And if you so happen to have a very flexible body by which you can do Hatha Yoga with extreme ease, because some people are very stiff in their bodies and some people are super flexible in their bodies, then do the complicated asanas. But again, this is not the alpha and the omega of Hatha Yoga. Many people here, they get amazed that we do an asana like Jiva Balasana. Jiva Balasana requires almost no flexibility, that standing asana with, it's which resembles with a horseman posture from the Taoism, from the Qigong, the rider or whatever you call. That asana, if you do it 1 hour non-stop, you get effects bigger than 5 complicated asanas put together. And that's why I'm saying yoga teachers have evaluated and they have discovered that some of these super contortionistic asanas from Hatha Yoga, they are just the product of some monkey people who wanted to demonstrate, can you put your foot behind your neck? Yes, I can put my foot behind my neck, and so what? Is that Hatha Yoga? No. And that's why follow the spirit of Hatha Yoga as we continue. It continues in shloka number 26 and 27 with a famous asana. In many Hatha Yoga texts and in the courses of Agama, it is stated that perhaps, arguably, this is the most healing one single asana from all Hatha Yoga. Like when you count the effects of healing, the biggest number is in this one, together with other super healing asanas like Paschimottanasana, Shirshasana, Sarvangasana, but this one is perhaps the number one. Place the right foot by the root of the left thigh and the right foot out over around the left knee. Grab the feet and twist the body. This is the asana taught by Sri Matsya Nath. The founder of the Hatha Yoga classical system, which we read here, Svatmarama, would say, I am a disciple of that guy. So that guy is like the number 2 guru of the lineage, was called Matsyendra, the lord of the fishes, because there is an absolutely weird legend in India that, like Jonas, the Bible prophet, Matsyendra was swallowed by a big fish, allegedly a whale, that must have been in the ocean then, so he was living by the ocean. And as being in the stomach of a fish, he was alive and healthy, and he overheard Shiva when he was teaching Hatha Yoga to Parvati. And then when he came out of the fish, the story doesn't tell us how exactly he came out of that fish, then he knew Hatha Yoga. The occultists, they say that means he picked up Hatha Yoga from Akasha. He went in clairvoyance in Akasha Tattva. He saw the video clips of the gods, Shiva in particular, teaching yoga in the world of the gods to the deities, and there he translated it to earth. He's called Matsyendra, the lord of the Indra of the fishes. Matsya is fish and Indra is lord, god, master, expert. And he's the lord of the fishes because he was swallowed by a fish, and then he lived to tell the story, and he came with Hatha Yoga back. Some people take the Indra out, and therefore here he is called Sri Matsya Nath. Not from the school, not yoga, the not yogis, and Matsya as allusion to Matsyendra. Everybody says when you say Matsya Nath, you know that you speak about Matsyendra. In modern yoga, this yoga is called Matsyendra Asana, the asana of Matsyendra himself. It's a difficult asana, and yoga teachers evaluate that in normal practitioners, somewhere 1 in 100 to 1 in 1,000 can actually do a correct Matsyendrasana. It's a rather difficult asana. Here in Agama, we teach the tolerant version of it, which is called Ardha Matsyendrasana, which means half of Matsyendrasana, in which the position of one of the feet is toned down, and that makes it practicable by all. Here in Agama, we notice that 80%, 90% of the people can perform Ardha Matsyendrasana from the first try, and therefore it's an asana which is available to all. So I will not describe to you, you know, most of you know it, it's this twisted spinal twist asana. There are many versions of it, most of them not traditional, and Svatmarama now tells us the benefits. How would you sum up Ardha Matsyendrasana or Matsyendrasana, the full on, in 15 words, or how many words there are here? Listen what Svatmarama does out of it. He says, the practice of Matsyendrasana stimulates the digestive fire and is a powerful weapon that breaks the circle of terrible diseases. So he gives 2 effects. It stimulates the digestive fire. For Ayurveda, if your digestive fire dies, you die and you grow old. The digestive fire is the alpha and the omega. If you are a kind of person who tells me, last night here in Kopangan, it was cold, Svatmarama scorns at you because he says, you've got no digestive fire, for God's sake. You are supposed to burn from your stomach. There is supposed to be a furnace in your belly button. No, if you feel cold in Greenland, that's understandable. But if you feel cold in Kopangan, your Jatar Agni, your inner fire, your digestive fire is fucked seriously. No? For Ayurveda, you need to go around blazing from your belly button. Then your food is 110% digested. Everything is reduced to ashes. You don't suffer from constipation. You don't suffer from sluggish digestion. You don't suffer from cold feet and cold hands, which say that the blood is not reaching there except with great difficulty. And then how do you expect the toxins to be chased out of your feet and out of your hands if the blood is not like boom, 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 pumping, 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 pumping hard, and so on. You should be warm, glazing, So basically for Ayurveda and for the yogis, this is a measure of Manipura chakra. And those of you who did 3 days in Agama Yoga, you remember the Sahaja Agnisara Dauti in the 3rd day and the theory about it. Manipura chakra is the chakra of the physical health. If your Manipura chakra goes bust, your physical health starts rolling down the hill. It starts going down. No, a strong Manipura is unbeatable. You say, my grandfather smoked and ate meat and he lived 104 years. That's because your grandfather had a very strong Manipura chakra. People with Manipura chakra, even when they abuse themselves, they live long and they are strong. And people who have weak Manipura chakra, even when they are 40 years of age or 50 or 60, they fall ill, they drag themselves from here to there. And the Manipura chakra is the key of strength, and in Ayurveda it is described as digestive fire. The Sanskrit words for it are Jathar Agni, the inner Agni. Yeah? And if this inner, so Matsyendrasana increases the Jathar Agni, which means it will heal everything. Because when your Jathar Agni comes back, if you have cancer, you have cancer because your Jathar Agni is dying. Strengthen your Jathar Agni and the cancer will run away squealing through the pores of your skin. It will get out of your body and run to another galaxy, because the fire is the one which keeps order in your system. It's like the sun of your inner solar system, the center. So Matsyendrasana and Ardha Matsyendrasana to a smaller extent stimulates the digestive fire. And here is a metaphor. It is described as a powerful weapon that breaks the circle of terrible diseases. He doesn't speak about flu, that you have a flu and with Ardha Matsyendrasana or with Matsyendrasana you can shorten the course of the flu. Flu is a joke. He speaks about terrible diseases. That means diseases which give pain and death. The real bad things. No? And Matsyendrasana, when you read the Agama theory about Ardha Matsyendrasana, you see it's one of the most healing asanas. Somehow it does something. There are Ayurvedic doctors and yoga doctors who say even if you have worms in your body, you do Ardha Matsyendrasana or Matsyendrasana every day, and the worms will die inside your body. Your body is producing an energy, a substance, something which simply exorcises you. It simply kills everything. It heals you from inside. That's why you see, when you read about it, Matsyendrasana is a formidable asana. Unfortunately, just for those of you who know Agama style, Ardha Matsyendrasana does not act so much on Manipura, because in the full Matsyendrasana, if this leg, you don't put it down there, you keep it up here, like in, I don't have place to do, in the lotus pose. And therefore, when you do Ardha Matsyendrasana, this heel is coming in here and pressing in your abdomen very hard. It's caught between your thigh and your belly when you bend the legs. And that makes it that there is a strong, much stronger activation on Manipura. While Ardha Matsyendrasana, it's a Vishuddha chakra asana. Full Matsyendrasana, it's a Manipura Vishuddha asana. And therefore, it's different. But again, Matsyendrasana is so difficult for most people that we mention it in the papers of Agama, but we don't teach it because we don't want to create a complex of inferiority in people. 99% of our students going around saying they are teaching some asana which nobody in class can perform. That's why full Matsyendrasana is for those of you who are flexible and who have the fondness to try more advanced physical practice. Otherwise, Ardha Matsyendrasana is good enough and pretty much everybody can practice it in class. And he continues on line 2 of that shloka. Its regular practice, we still talk about Matsyendrasana, bestows the arousing of Kundalini and stabilizes the lunar fluid. There is no spirituality without Kundalini. There is no paranormal development without Kundalini. Kundalini is the alpha and the omega in the transformation of a human being, both in terms of spiritual evolution as well as in terms of energy development. So by saying that Ardha Matsyendrasana arouses the Kundalini or helps one to arouse the Kundalini, it's fundamental to remember that. And it stabilizes the lunar fluid. As you will see later in the text when we talk about the mudras, Hatha Yoga Pradipika is part of a yoga tradition which divides it creates in the human being a double pole where the spiritual moon is in the area of Soma chakra around the mouth area inside the head, and Manipura chakra is the sun, and the sun and the moon form like a battery. It's a battery where you have here the moon and here the sun, and if this battery is not administered correctly, which most people do, like living normally, it consuming this battery, and the result is that in 80 years you are old and you die. And basically the whole key is to conserve the lunar fluid, because the lunar fluid produced in the area of the head is something magic and mysterious which gives you long life and a higher consciousness. And Hatha Yoga Pradipika is part of that, but this was not mentioned yet, so I'm just calling your attention that it says that Ardha Matsyendrasana arouses Kundalini and stabilizes the lunar fluid. So what did it say? It says it increases the digestive fire. It's a powerful weapon against terrible diseases. It says it breaks the circle, because terrible diseases, they lock you in a circle. You are like a person locked inside a tower, inside a magic circle. The karma, you have to break the circle. When you have cancer or you have something like this, your karma is pushing you to die. And that's why usually people, when they have a terrible disease, they need the support of a yoga therapist or somebody who sometimes has to go hard on them, because it's like from inside their own head, these people are blinded by their own karma. They have a blind spot, and then they say, "Que sera, sera." No, that's not the correct attitude. But Svatmarama knows, and he says terrible diseases, they create like a circle, and Ardha Matsyendrasana in this situation is the powerful weapon that breaks the circle. So, Jataragni, breaking the circle of terrible diseases, arousing of Kundalini, and stabilizes the lunar fluid, which means you can reach higher states of consciousness and even forms of advanced physical immortality or anyhow long life. 4 effects. It stretches the oblique muscles of the back. So those of you who have pain in the back like fibromyalgia, you will get relieved. Svatmarama doesn't give a shit on your pain in the muscles of the back. That's peanuts. That's kindergarten for Svatmarama. Svatmarama cares about the big things, the occult things, the metaphysical things. Okay, yeah, it also does wonderful things to the oblique muscles of your back. That's not really relevant to Svatmarama. 28 starts with another asana. Again, 2 shlokas. Stretch the legs on the ground like sticks, hold the big toes with the hands, and touch the forehead to the knees. This is called Paschimottanasana. Observations. People, when you do today asanas like Padahastasana, Paschimottanasana, they start giving us yoga teachers, and they say, you guys are not doing it correctly. Because I have done some Tai Chi with a Chinese master, and they told me that if you stretch the knee, if you lock the knee, then you block the circulation of the energy in the leg, and therefore always when you stand up, you should stand up with the legs slightly 1 degree bent, not locked. Answer: you and your Chinese master can go and kiss the ass of Svatmarama. You are idiots. Yeah? It's not the same principle which is applied there. The great Pythagoras, in the verses translated in Latin, the famous golden verses of Pythagoras, he says, non frangocitep el pano. Do not break the bread. Which means you should not mix 5 teachings from yoga with 5 teachings from Christianity and with 2 teachings from the North American shamans. For example, in Buddhism, in Tibetan Buddhism, alcohol is not permitted because they work on Ajna chakra, and alcohol, even a little bit, destroys brain cells. People who want a pure Ajna chakra, they do not touch alcohol. Exactly like in Islam, it's forbidden. Period. Zero tolerance. No discussion about it. But people say, yeah, but the Christian monks, they drink a little glass of wine now and then. Yes, because they work on anahata, and a little bit of wine opens the heart chakra, but it's not very good for ajna. So what do you want to be? Smart and heartless, or heartful and stupid? No? It's like if you want to go a bit radical, you want a lot of ajna and zero anahata, or you want a lot of anahata and zero ajna. Don't break the bread. Go on the way of your Tibetan guru, or go on the way of your Christian elder. Because in one of the traditions, wine is allowed, and in the other tradition, alcohol is not allowed. And if you break the bread, the demons will cheat you, and you will choose the wine from this one, and a little bit of money from the Judaism, and a little bit of I don't know from there, and then you make a salad. You take the best of all of them. I'm doing sex because I'm tantric. I am doing some money peddling because I'm Judaistic. I'm doing a little bit of holy war because I'm Islamic. And I'm doing a little bit of wine because I gathered all the permissions from all the religions. You are supposed to have one permission, and the other 3 should be on the red list. Because each one of them has its strong sides and its weak sides. It insists on something. Therefore, back to our Paschimottanasana. It says, stretch the legs on the ground like sticks. The word danda is used like in Dandasana, like sticks. They have to be stretched, locked, overstretched. You don't bend the legs. It's as simple as that. And screw the Taoism and the Qigong. In Taoism and in Qigong, they can bend the legs as much as they want. In Paschimottanasana, you don't. In Padahastasana, you don't. But then the energy is not running through the legs. That's bullshit. It runs very well. When I do Paschimottanasana and Padahastasana, I can feel the energy running perfectly well. So that's not true. But then it means the Taoists are not right. I don't know. I'm not here to judge the Qigong masters or to find out. Maybe they were right in a certain context, in a certain way. Maybe they spoke about one form of Qi, and I'm talking about another form of Qi. There are 115 explanations, and those of you who are scientific students of these things, feel free to study them scientifically and from all the standpoints. But when you learn yoga, you have to do it like the yogis did. Stretch the legs on the ground like sticks. Hold the big toes. People say, should we not hold the foot? The big toes, says Hatha Yoga Pradipika. It's an asana which goes to the big toe because it circulates energy of Muladhara, and the big toe corresponds to Muladhara. And touch the forehead to the knees. That's the difficult one. Yeah? I did never in my life touch the forehead on my knees because I cannot. My body was never flexible enough for that. I had colleagues in the yoga classes, when they were bending, they were like fractured in their waist. They could fold like a napkin. You know, their body was just like, and their chest was gluing to their thighs and their forehead to their knees. I always envied them. Not everybody can do that, but that's the target. Svatmarama says, push your forehead towards the knees. This is called Paschimottanasana. And 29. This Paschimottanasana is foremost among asanas. It's not such a difficult asana, except this part with the forehead to the knees, which is difficult to me at least. It's not that, it's a easy asana relatively. Not very tortuous, not very contortionistic. And yet Svatmarama, he says, foremost among asanas. Real important. The one of the main 10 asanas. This Paschimottanasana directs the energy, which here is called pavana. He uses the word pavana. Always when they talk about the energy, they use 3, 4, 5, 6 different words. Pavana, prana, vayu, maruta, and others. And many of them are names from mythology. Pavana is the god of the wind. It's the wind god. So you say you push the wind god, which means the essence of the wind. Something which is the divine part of the wind, which means not wind, means energy, prana, which feels like a wind which is flowing through your body. It's for connoisseurs. It's an advanced metaphor for connoisseurs. It directs the energy along the back. What's along the back? The spine. So it pushes the energy along the spine channel, which for the yogis is the #1 channel of the body. And that's very important to clean that nadi, to shine that nadi. Kindles the digestive fire, Jataragni again, and people would say, doesn't this mean that Paschimottanasana will also have a secondary effect on Manipura chakra? It does. It's not mentioned in the papers of Agama because #1 effect is on Muladhara, but it has a secondary effect on the digestive fire in Manipura. Reading Hatha Yoga Pradipika, you can see that. Reduces the belly. Now, if you are to be a bit cynical, when you do Paschimottanasana, there is no place, and especially when you do it like a wet napkin, where is the belly? There is no space for the belly. If you had any belly, it would be squashed. Therefore, mechanically, by doing a good Paschimottanasana, you are telling to your body, there is no place for this blob right here between my spine and between my thighs. So take it and shit it, take it and sweat it, do something with it, but not here. So doing Paschimottanasana every day reduces the belly and it starts the fire, which is a Manipura effect, not a Muladhara effect. And the last is really good. You can ask, are these guys joking or what? And it says, and removes all diseases. All diseases, like prostate cancer, yes. Svatmarama says, yes, trust me, it removes all diseases. But please, friends, remember, when you do this Paschimottanasana, you have to do it close to perfection, and you have to do it 3 hours every day or something. We are not talking here about some Ashtanga class where you go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Inhale, wasn't it good? That Paschimottanasana will not heal shit. No? Paschimottanasana heals all diseases when it's done like the yogis did it in the old days. Do it 3 hours and there will be no disease in your body. But otherwise, you have to take such statements with a pinch of salt. Yeah? And any one of you tries to do Paschimottanasana 25 minutes or 1 hour, you will see the kind of willpower and self-discipline and concentration that you must have. Because the people who have a restless mind and whose emotions and energies are all over the place, if they do 10 minutes of Paschimottanasana, they start having the heebie-jeebies and they feel like jumping through the room like a chicken whose neck has been cut off, you know. You feel like wriggling through the room because you have so much energy and restlessness building up in your body. Not to mention that your Kundalini is rising and other things are happening. And therefore, this is the real Hatha Yoga we're talking about. And when they say this one is breaking the circle of terrible diseases, or Paschimottanasana, kindles the digestive fire, reduces the belly, directs the energy in the spine, and removes all diseases. Come on, man, if you have psoriasis, yes, but you have to do 3 hours of Paschimottanasana, so you get an alchemical reaction in your body. You have the lead turned into gold inside your body. Then the psoriasis disappears. Doesn't disappear when you do 5 minutes. Here we're talking about a different league. This is a totally different league of Hatha Yoga, not the people who say, oh, this morning I did 20 minutes of Hatha Yoga. Good, excellent. When you will do 3 hours and 20 minutes of Paschimottanasana, then we talk about Svatmarama and this kind of teachings. This is the professional league here. It's the last level. Another one, a fundamental one, until now they told us 2 which kindle the digestive fire, so does the third one. And if I remember correctly, maybe even the 4th one, if there is one, they very much love the asanas on Manipura. The Hatha Yogis of India, they looked splendid. There are some photos taken from a Kumbh Mela in the 1960s, which were published in the Planète magazine in France. You see there a photo of 3,000 men. There is not one that has a belly. All of them look fantastically good physically. No, those were the days where there were still Hatha Yogis in India and they were practicing. And therefore, we are talking here about, in Hatha Yoga, Manipura was very popular because many of these Hatha Yoga things, and when you did 100 Udyanas and the 100 Naulis, and you're living in the tropical sun of India, and then you did some pranayama in the sunshine, and you're sweating, and then you did Matsyendrasana and Paschimottanasana, and now comes Mayurasana, which are super Manipuristic asanas, then these people had a physical shape. They were in such a shape like people who are going to the Olympic Games to gymnastics or something like this. They were like gymnasts. That's why, deluded by this, people like Krishnamacharya and Iyengar and the other guy, Pratapi Joyce and others, they thought that yoga is a sort of kin, a sort of relative of gymnastics. It is, and it isn't. They were doing it in another way. 30. Plant the palms firmly on the ground and place the elbows on the sides of the navel. Lift the body in the air, balance straight like a stick. Straight like a stick. This tells everything. This practice is called Mayurasana. Mayura meaning a peacock, and for a person living in the countryside, you do the peacock. This excellent 31, now the effects. Listen here, the effects. This is indeed Mayurasana. We don't have a student in the school who has done it 5 minutes yet, to my knowledge, because I said, whoever can do it 5 minutes on the watch in front of me, I will grant them a great favor in yoga. The first student that I see doing 5 minutes of Mayurasana, you know. I had students who reached to 4 minutes of it, but 5, nobody has beaten that. Not to mention that these maniacs, they say that you should do it a muhurta, 48 minutes or something like this, like 5 minutes is a beginner level to them. But let's see at least that. This excellent Mayurasana quickly destroys all diseases, again Manipura, such as tumors, which are called in Ayurveda gulma, the different tumors. They were speaking about enlarged liver, enlarged pancreas or sick pancreas, tumoral pancreas, enlarged spleen, the abdominal tumors, tumors on the bowels, on the intestines, like intestinal cancer, which makes tumors and so on. All the forms of tumors in Ayurveda are called gulma, and Hatha Yoga Pradipika says you can kill them with Mayurasana. Dropsy, Udara, called in Sanskrit in Ayurveda, and other abdominal illnesses. It says all diseases such as tumors, dropsy, and other abdominal illnesses. Words of disorders of the three doshas. Ayurveda says 99.9% of the diseases are produced by disorders of the three doshas. And Svatmarama says Mayurasana, words of all the disorders of the three doshas. That means your three doshas will be put in order. You will be healthy until the age of 100. I have personally had a colleague in yoga when I was young. He was 93 years old. He could do Mayurasana a minute and a half at 93. And he was doing Shankha Prakshalana once every month or once every 2 months. And he was 93 and going strong with Hatha Yoga. And therefore, it definitely does something. Kindles the digestive fire. Third time the Jataragni is mentioned. Here again, you have no digestive fire, you are as good as dead. Reduces to ashes unwholesome food. It's an expression which some Sanskritologists translated food indiscriminately eaten. Like you have eaten something which you ought not to have eaten. Some food which you may discover was a little poisonous or a little old or something. And here I prefer to translate it unwholesome food, unhealthy food. So reduces to ashes the unwholesome food. Like there will be no indigestion, food poisoning or anything like it. And even the deadly poison Kalakuta can be digested. Kalakuta is a Vedic expression of deadly poison. It applies to the poison which Shiva has swallowed as well in the Puranas. But the yogis, when they translate this, masters of yoga like Shivananda and others, they said even if you are bitten by a cobra or stung by a scorpio, you will live if you do Mayurasana. Then the question can be, what if Putin detonates the bombs and we are going to have 1 year of post-apocalyptic time with radioactive dust raining everywhere, and the food and the grass will be partly radioactive? The yogic answer is do Mayurasana. Maybe you will live to tell the story. A strong Manipura might do that. Like a strong Manipura is paranormal. Remember the story which we give, some teachers tell that story in the Sahaja Agnisara Dauti theory about Rasputin. How Rasputin was virtually indestructible because he had a huge Manipura chakra and they couldn't poison him, they couldn't kill him, they couldn't do a lot of things because of that huge Manipura. The answer of yoga is do 1 hour of Mayurasana and you can swim to radioactive water and you will not get it in your body and your body will not get poisoned by it. No? People say, do you know that for sure, Swamiji? No, but that's what I believe. I have the right to a faith system, and my faith says these people have explored the functions of the chakras and the Hatha Yoga to a level which is unknown to us in the modern world. These people were living in a hut of 2 by 2, and for 50 years they were doing Hatha Yoga from morning till evening. Therefore, if anybody knows what the effects of Hatha Yoga are, these are the kind of people who know what we are talking about. And thus, this excellent Mayurasana destroys all diseases, especially abdominal ones, regulates the 3 doshas, kindles the digestive fire, reduces to ashes bad food, and even the deadly poison Kalakuta can be digested. Imagine what a fire you need to have to eat poison. No? And it's known. In India, the cobra poison is a concern because now and then people were getting attacked and bitten by cobras, and therefore the Indians were interested if there is a way to stay away from poison. Hatha Yoga texts claim this. Now, the last one is an asana, 16 asanas, some of them very spectacular, like something which I have just said, and then the one which comes in the Shloka 32, just one shloka briefly, but it's there. Lying back on the ground like a corpse is Shavasana. The corpse. People say, come on man, that's not an asana. It is an asana. And it's one of the 16 given by Hatha Yoga Pradipika, which shows it's much more important than it looks, because people expect an asana to be physically demanding. No, not necessarily. And it concludes briefly by saying it eliminates tiredness and gives rest to the mind. The word which is used in Sanskrit here is famous in the yoga tradition. Rest to the mind is expressed by the Sanskrit expression Chitta Vishranti. And if you ask any student in the advanced classes in Agama, they are supposed to know by heart what Chitta Vishranti means. Because Chitta Vishranti is Nirvikalpa Samadhi, and it is the result of Anavopaya, of the first form of practice. It means when the mind stops. So basically this little shloka tells you if you do Shavasana, you can reach Nirvikalpa Samadhi by becoming one with Shiva, who is Shava, the dead Shiva, which is the mind stopped. Repose. If your mind can stay frozen for 30 minutes, like a mirror, like a water without ripples, then you have reached Nirvikalpa Samadhi. And that's not a small thing at all, not at all. So, then he continues in shloka number 33. 84 asanas in all have been taught by Shiva. I shall now describe the 4 essential ones. Until now, he described 12. And there are 4 more which he wants to talk about, but mysteriously he left them to the end. And he doesn't forget to tell us that in the Shaiva scriptures of India, they are being described 84 asanas. Here in Agama, when you finish our program of asanas, you are given a list of all 84. They are not in Hatha Yoga Pradipika, they are not in Geranda Samhita, they are not in Shiva Samhita, but there is a Shaiva text in the south of India, which was translated in French by Alain Danielou, an eminent Sanskritologist who passed away many years ago. He was from the golden time of Sanskritology in the 50s and 60s and early 70s, and there he gave the list and the effects of the 84 classical asanas as taught by Shiva, as mentioned in the Shaiva tradition. So here we had 12, and now he recalls that there are 84 after all, and he doesn't say, well, I'm not going to teach them all here because your guru can teach you in those things. I shall now describe the 4 essential ones. The 4 essential ones, as you are going to see, they are sitting asanas, which are meant for meditation, because his purpose is like go into the higher states of consciousness, rise your kundalini. What about Mayurasana? Yeah, I described those ones. They kindle the digestive fire. They are very good. They eliminate all diseases. But if you want to boil it down to what really, really matters, now we come to the trumps. And he starts with the one, with a list, and then with the one which is considered the most important asana of yoga. There is a shloka which is repeated by other yoga texts and which says exactly that. He says in the shloka number 34, Siddha, Padma, Simha, and Bhadra are these 4, which means Siddhasana, Padmasana, Simhasana, the lion pose, and Bhadrasana, the blessed pose. And the best among them is Siddhasana. Always sit comfortably in it. He propagates from directly that Siddhasana is the best. Siddhasana has a privileged name because Siddha means perfection. Siddhasana is the posture of perfection, the perfect pose, and Siddhi also means paranormal capacity of the mind. So Siddhasana is the asana of the Siddhis. That's why even more than the lotus pose, which is actually more difficult. So when we say how much effort do you have to do, Siddhasana or Padmasana, and how much will you get from them? It's not proportional. It's less effort with more effects in Siddhasana and more effort with slightly less effect in Padmasana. So although Padmasana, the lotus pose, is so emblematic in yoga, actually the number one in Hatha Yoga Pradipika, in Shiva Samhita, and in other teachings is always Siddhasana. Siddhasana, Siddhasana, which is relatively easy to do. Only those of you who have serious problems with your knees or hips or feet will have a problem with Siddhasana. And he describes it. 35. Press the heel of one foot against the perineum, fixing the other foot above the penis or pubis. These are texts usually written by boys for other boys. If it was for women, it would be something with a mons veneris, with a mount of Venus and the clitoris. The Bihar school of yoga, under the guidance of Swami Satyananda, has written a version which is Siddhasana for women. No? Because women, when they put the heel in their perineum, actually the heel goes in the vagina. It half enters in the vagina, so it's, because men don't have a hole there, and therefore the heel is propped against the bulbous root of the penis when you put it in the perineum. But for women says, what happens if my labia are opening and the heel is slightly going inside? Swami Satyananda says that's the way it should be done. That's the way to do it. And then when I put it on top of the penis, I have no penis, but it kind of presses on top of my clitoris. Swami Satyananda again says that's the way it should be done for girls, but this has not been written in the texts because these texts are written by men for other men. Does it mean that there was no Hatha Yoga tradition for women? No. It's far from the truth. Women were doing Hatha Yoga, but the texts were written from the standpoint of men, and a guru should explain the details for women. So put the feet as you know, press the chin firmly on the chest. Actually, the word which is used is hridaya. You cannot touch the chin on the hridaya. It's more like a direction when it says look between the eyebrows. It means look in Ajna Chakra. It's not about the eyebrows. It's like you look through the eyebrows. So it says don't put the chin on your heart. Push the chin towards the heart. No, it's metaphoric. It's poetic. It's not like that. And then I read somewhere, some yoga teacher, I think coming from Bihar School of Yoga itself, that they were saying actually the chin will be 3 centimeters away from the chest. That's not true. Anatomy of Yoga, there are a couple of excellent books of anatomy of yoga, and they demonstrated that there are different typologies genetically. Like for example, people for whom bending the knee outside, like in the lotus pose, is damaging, hard. And those people should do Vajrasana or Yoni Asana. They should bend the knee towards outside, like the Thais when they are sitting, with the foot outside, not inside, because there are two anatomically very different constitution of the knee joint. And genetically some people have one, and genetically some people have the other. So for some people doing too much lotus pose, it will destroy their knees for the rest of their lives. Even if you do it gently and gradually. Those people are supposed to sit in Yoni Asana or in Brahmacharya Asana, for those of you who know the Agama lore, and in that way to bend the knee towards the calf on the outside of the thigh, not on the inside of the thigh, like in cross-legged positions. The same thing is valid about this. The ratio between the collarbones and the neck is different, which simply means some people have a neck which is disproportionately long. And some women are considered to be very beautiful because they have long swan-like necks. And so those women can never touch the chin on the chest because the neck is too long and the chin is too far away from the chest. And when they try, the best they can do is this. When they go to maximum, 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 they don't touch. And it's indeed about 3 centimeters away from the chest. But some of us have shorter necks and they have a different flexibility. And for me, it's very easy to touch and even press my chin on the chest. So take it with a pinch of salt. These are things which you have to learn from a teacher. Only somebody who did tons of Hatha Yoga and who has had friends, colleagues, mates, and who has seen it on pupils and students knows exactly the ins and outs of this. And that's why, again, these are general advice, and the teacher knows, okay, you are the kind who cannot touch the chin on the chest, don't bother. Then either we make a little cushion, a pillow, and you put it here and you press the pillow, or you do other alternatives of it. So that's why I say, don't worry, these are details which I do not intend to teach here in a public lecture. Press the chin firmly on the chest, on Hridaya. Sit up motionless, it's important. Controlling the senses or indriyas, which means there should be no erection, there should be no itching on your skin, there should be no cold, there should be no heat, there should be no desire to urinate, there should be the indriyas. Remember, there are 5 karmendriyas and 5 gyanendriyas. Those 10 channels have to be controlled, which means no disturbing influence should come from any of the karmendriyas or from any of the gyanendriyas. That's a story which you learn in Agama in the day 3 of our first level course. No, that's where you learn which are the gyanendriyas and the karmendriyas and how they are related to the chakras and all that. So controlling the senses, like you have to sit motionless, calm, with your mind undisturbed, and the gaze steadily in the direction of the eyebrows. So you stay like this, you sit like this, but your eyes are looking here in Ajna chakra. So your eyes are crossed up there. This is called Siddhasana, which opens the door to liberation or moksha. Please understand, he used many words to tell you how to do it. And then when he wants to conclude, he says, this is Siddhasana, which opens the door to moksha, the door to liberation. Period. Siddhasana in one short sentence. If you want to say one thing about Siddhasana, what would you say? Svatmarama says, this is Siddhasana, which opens the door to liberation. Do you want the door to liberation to be open for you? Well, if you are a real yogi, of course you do. How do you open the door to liberation? With Siddhasana. Please remember, Siddhasana among all Svastikasana is easier, and we teach it to our beginners. But Siddhasana is the real deal. Siddhasana is the real deal. Yeah? So, this is Siddhasana. Another variation is placing the left heel above the penis and the right one on top of the left is also called Siddhasana. This is an almost impossible asana in which one heel is above the genitals and the other is above that one. So the heels are a little bit really up and the twist of the legs is really unnatural. That's much more difficult, and that is not considered to be the legitimate version, the full. The version of Siddhasana is the one which we just mentioned and which we show in the courses. But here Svatmarama says, I met another version. There are other teachers around or some of books or something which say, no, when you do Siddhasana, you can do it like that. Okay, he says, this is another version of it. Some call this posture Siddhasana, others know it as Vajrasana. Whoa, 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 whoa. In Agama and in half of yoga of India, Vajrasana is when you sit Japanese style on your knees, like in the Islamic prayers, this position on the knees. No? What has that got to do with it? Nothing. But India is a mess when it comes to names. And because both of them work on Ajna chakra, and because Ajna chakra is the nature of the mind, the sixth element, and the sixth element is Vajra, the diamond, the mind is like the diamond, clear like the diamond, fast as the lightning, and indestructible as diamond. Because of that, everything which works on Ajna tends to be called Vajrasana. This takes you to Vajra, to the nature of the mind. But Vajrasana actually and Siddhasana are very different. So he knows that there is a variety of names, and he says some call this Siddhasana, others know it as Vajrasana. Others yet say it is Muktasana, and others speak of it as Guptasana. If you will take a book of Hatha Yoga, you will see that Muktasana is Muktasana. It's called Muktasana, no, because you liberate the feet in that position. It's called Guptasana because you hide the feet. You place the feet between the calf and the thigh, and you can't see the feet. The person is cross-legged, but the feet are hidden in the fold of the opposite leg. That's why it's called Guptasana, the asana of the limbs which are Gupta, hidden, invisible. And therefore, it's an additional demonstration to what I wanted to tell so many times. Don't bother about names in India. Always when you hear that this person is doing Vajrasana, you have to find out if it's the Vajrasana which you know, or if it is Siddhasana, or if it is Padmasana, which is also nicknamed Vajrasana sometimes, because it works on Ajna Chakra also, or other, God knows what variation from whichever corner of India it comes. And that's why don't be attached to the names too much. And to conclude, he says, just as moderation in diet, mithara or mitahara, it's a factor which is, this Vatmarama, he loves it. He says you should be moderate in your diet, which means not too much, not too little, as Buddha found out eventually. Just as, and Krishna says it clearly in Bhagavad Gita. He says, just as moderation in diet is considered to be foremost among the yamas. Like he says, what's the biggest yama? The biggest yama is, first of all, control your diet. Moderation in diet. Some people say, yeah, but in Agama we learned this ahimsa. Yes, it's different systems altogether. Yeah? Learn to juggle with these things. Don't get hypnotized by names. Just as moderation in diet is foremost in the yamas, according to him, and ahimsa foremost among the niyamas. So for him, ahimsa is a niyama, non-violence. But like Mahatma Gandhi, he considers it foremost. He says the most important of the niyamas is ahimsa, practice non-violence. So is Siddhasana considered by the Siddhas to be foremost among the asanas. People, this is an amazing metaphor. It says there is the most important yama, there is the most important niyama, and there is one asana which is the most important asana. And that is Siddhasana. If you are to learn one asana in this lifetime, learn Siddhasana. It's as simple as that. 39. Of the 84 asanas, so if you take the whole corpus of asanas, Siddhasana should be practiced always. He uses a word which means constantly, non-stop, or daily. He says you should practice Siddhasana every day. It cleanses the impurities of the 72,000 nadis. Second statement, right? In the first sloka he said, this is the asana which opens the door to liberation. And now after a few, he says this is purifying all the nadis. According to yoga, there are 72,000 nadis, which are like the nerves, the peripheral nerves, the capillary blood vessels, everything. All the little channels of the body. They are all included as nadis. And meridians from acupuncture and all the rest. He says all the 72,000 nadis are cleansed by Siddhasana. So it has another effect. And in parapsychology, it is claimed that that is because Siddhasana roughly makes your body assume the shape of a quarter of a pyramid, where the spine is the axis of the pyramid, the arms are two edges of the pyramid, and the legs are describing a triangular shape, which is like 1/4 of the foundation of a pyramid. And because of this, sitting seriously long in Siddhasana brings a cosmic energy into you, which purifies all the nadis. Because you are going to say, man, I thought that Uddiyana Bandha purifies the nadis. Yeah, there you can feel it because you sweat it out. But Siddhasana does it in a calm way just by you sitting in that position, and slowly the cosmic energy does its job. And he continues with Siddhasana. He gives so many shlokas to this Siddhasana. He says, a yogin who meditates on the Supreme Self, like first condition, you have to meditate on who am I? Because that's the ultimate question for the human being. The problem is that we feel that we are, and we don't know if we are, or what we are, or who we are. No? And you know the answer of Shankaracharya, who is a pan-Indian answer. I could give you the answer of Abhinavagupta, but that's a Shaivistic answer. It belongs to one sect of India. But Shankaracharya is answering in all the languages for everybody. He says, I am consciousness and bliss without end. I am Shiva, I am Shiva. That's the answer. But you don't have to know it theoretically. You have to see it, feel it, experience it. That's why the yogis, since the dawn of time, meditated on this. Why do I have questions about who I am? Because it should be obvious who I am. But it's not at all. 10 people asked about who they are, they will give 10 very different answers, and all of them confused and imprecise. No? None. You will not answer a person on the street, who are you? And the person will say, what do you mean? I'm consciousness and bliss without end. I'm Shiva. If you get a person who answers that, you might have met with Shankaracharya, and you should keep friends with that person. Stay friends with that person, because that's a very, very special person. So, a yogi who meditates on the Supreme Self, who practices moderation in diet. So that's a very important condition for Svatmarama. If you eat like shit, even if you practice yoga and meditate on who am I, you will not make it. For Svatmarama, it's very important that you should eat moderately, which means, of course, vegetarian and all that. In India, it's not even a discussion if you should be vegetarian or not. It's a must. Yeah? So Svatmarama is not even going to assume for a second that you are not vegetarian. If you are not vegetarian, you are out of his classification. So a yogin who meditates on the Supreme Self, who practices moderation in diet, and sits daily in Siddhasana for 12 years, attains perfection or Siddhi. What he doesn't say is for how long. He says you should do daily Siddhasana for 12 years. But how long? I'll tell you, because I met yogis in India who did that and who reached the state of Samadhi. One of the students of my Indian guru, Swami Munishananda, who was called Swami Dharmananda, I forgot, I don't have any knowledge if he is still alive. He was about 15 to 20 years older than me at that time, so now he would be really old. He was living somewhere in Orissa, in the southeast of India. When he visited the ashram, I asked him what was his method for reaching the states of Samadhi. And it was this. He stayed in Siddhasana every day for 12 years, and then he had reached Samadhi. And I asked him, how long? What was your norm of staying? And he told me 4 hours. 4 hours of Siddhasana per day for 12 years. That's a straightforward way. If you get thrown in the Third World War on an island in the Pacific and you have no friends, no gurus, just coconuts to eat from the coconut trees and whatever else, and you don't know what to do, please remember it from today. 4 hours of Siddhasana for the next 12 years. That's what Robinson Crusoe should have done, and that's what Tom Hanks should have done in his Castaway adventure. 4 hours of Siddhasana for 12 years, and then they would have come back to Europe flying through the air like Milarepa. No? But nobody thinks about doing this even when they are thrown alone on an island, because everybody takes their hell, everybody takes their samsara, everybody takes their desires, everybody takes their monkey mind with them, and people abhor to sit quiet and focus on the third eye. No? 4 hours per day, you can do 1 hour at sunrise, 1 hour at midday, 1 hour at sunset, and 1 hour at midnight. Every 6 hours, you should stop and do 1 hour of Siddhasana. If you are, I don't know, retired, or if you are on an island, as I said, why can't you? Because there is a demon in here which keeps you busy with other things. So, and we are still with Siddhasana. He loves Siddhasana so much that he wants to tell you more. 41, Shloka 41. He says, of what use are then the many other asanas when success is attained through Siddhasana? No, like you can discard the other 83 asanas. One is enough, but you should practice it. 4 hours every day. The norm, Dhirendra Brahmachari said that actually it was not 4 hours. He said it was 3 hours and 48 minutes. Okay, make a little excess and make it 4 hours. Go 12 minutes over those 3 hours and 48 minutes. Make it a full 4 hours. So of what use are the other asanas? The prana is well restrained by Kevala Kumbhaka, and the Unmani Avashta, or the state transcending the mind, which gives delight, arises spontaneously without effort. So what's happening? Because he said you attain spirituality. Here, he obliquely gives a definition of what's happening when you are in those high states of consciousness. He gives 2 symptoms. He says the prana is well restrained by Kevala Kumbhaka. I have said it so many times. When you are in the superior stages of Laya Yoga or others, what's happening is that your breath is almost stopping, which means your Anahata chakra connects to the universe and you get prana without breathing. You don't need air to steal the prana. The prana is flowing directly. And then you are sitting there, your energy is centered in the spine, and you are breathing 1% or less. The French doctor Thérèse Bros wrote a rare book. Today you buy it with 400-500 euros on internet, on Abe Books or something. It's a very rare book. We have a copy of it in the Agama library. It's in French. It's a PhD in the French University, in CNRS, Centre National de Recherche Scientifique, and it is called, in translation, Instrumental Measurements upon the Yogis of India. She went to Lonavla, and together with Swami Kuvalayananda, she got the approval that she would bring EEG, EKG, and other machineries from France, and she would measure real yogis in the 1950s and early 60s, before the hippie wave fucked up everything, because then in India there started appearing all sorts of crooks who said, look at these Farangs, they come looking for yoga. My grandfather knew some yoga. I can teach this bullshit. Foreigners who don't understand any. And then there appeared a lot of fake gurus, and that's when Iyengar decided, oh, I'm going to publish a book of yoga and all that. And all the bullshit yoga appeared in the 1960s and after. If you read any book of yoga published before 1959, there was no bullshit. There can be a poor yoga book, but at least it's not bullshit yoga and it's not monkey yoga. Until 1960, yoga was a serious business. From the 1960s, it became diluted because there was an inflation on the market. There was over demand, and then the Indians, being smart boys, they started selling crap yoga to the foreigners, and this is how yoga became what it is today. That was the first step. And that's why I was telling about Thérèse Bros, she measured some real yogis, and she discovered that some of them could stop their heart completely. Some of them for 1 minute, some of them for 2 minutes. One of them was known that he could stop his heart for more than 1 week, which is impossible. Biological, like when they stopped it for 8 minutes, they said that it's like in deep diving, le grand bleu, the big blue, you know, that you have, but that there are secret tissue reserves in the body, and when you stop it 1 week, they took this guy to the Rockefeller Institute in New York, and I forgot his name, I have it in a book, and they buried him on the lawn there. Because they were afraid that in India there are secret channels through the earth. There is some, you know, they buried him in New York in the Rockefeller Institute with electrodes placed on his body and head. And in the first 1 hour, this guy his heart was beating with 240 beats per minute. There was not enough oxygen in his lungs and his tissues, even for 1 hour of so much heart beating. And still he did not die. And after 1 hour, his heart slowed down, and then it stopped. And it stayed stopped for 1 week. And that's why here the prana is well restrained by Kevala Kumbhaka. Kevala Kumbhaka means you hold your breath. Your breath stops. Kevala means isolation, insulation. Kevala Kumbhaka means Kumbhaka you retain, and you are like insulated. You are like in a soap bubble somewhere else. So your lungs shut down. They go like, and they shut down midway, halfway between full and empty. The breath is getting shorter and shorter, a bit of inhaling and a bit of exhaling. And the breath becomes imperceptible, and when one goes to Nirvikalpa Samadhi, it stops. And when it stops, eventually what happens is that the heart also stops. Yeah? So it says the prana is well restrained by Kevala Kumbhaka, because then the human being is connected directly to the universe. And the second symptom, the Unmani Avashta, Unmana means without mana, beyond manas. So the non-mental, it's called by Sri Aurobindo the supramental state, that there is a state in which the mind is actually not working. As Patanjali says, yoga is the stopping of the mind. And then you exist, but the mind is stopped, switched off for 5 minutes, or for 55 minutes, or for 5 hours and 55 minutes, or for whatever long time. That's called Nirvikalpa Samadhi in technical terms by Patanjali. Here in Hatha Yoga Pradipika, it's called Unmani Avashta, the state beyond the mind, the state above the mind, this state which transcends the mind, which gives delight. Very important. He says when you reach in that state, you check that you haven't become stupid. No, because my mind has stopped, which means maybe I'm a moron. Well, what's the difference between a moron and a yogi in Unmani Avashta? Unmani Avashta gives delight. This delight is nothing but ecstasy, beatitude, ananda. So you recognize this by the fact that the mind is transcended and your being is bathed in an inexplicable ecstatic state. You are happy from God. You are happy organically, transcendentally. So the prana is controlled and you are in Kevala Kumbhaka, and the Unmani Avashta, which gives delight, arises spontaneously without effort. Spontaneously, one goes into this Unmana, which gives ecstasy. He says this is Siddhasana, no? So he says, of what use are then the other asanas? Of course, if you have a problem with your thyroid gland, and in your daily life the thyroid gland causes enormous physiological problems in your life, then you want to do some shoulder stand, some Sarvangasana. So then you are going to say, Svatmarama, are you stupid? Of course Sarvangasana is of great use to me and to my life. But you see, Svatmarama is a fanatic. He speaks about Samadhi. He speaks about cosmic consciousness. And he says, if you can get that with Siddhasana, what's the use of all the others? What do we bother? Yeah, but for a proper person who has thyroid gland problems, Sarvangasana is very important. Therefore, we never minimize the effects of the asanas. Many asanas have other effects than the directly Sahasrara or Ajna spiritual effects, but still they are very important for people's comfort and for people's daily life and for people's state of health and others. And you saw that he himself contradicts himself. He says you do Mayurasana and it activates the digestive fire, and even if you have eaten poisonous food, you will get away with it. Well, what do we care about that? You know why? Because it sometimes happens that your digestive fire is poor and you have eaten some shitty stuff and so on. And then Mayurasana saves the day. So it's not so stupid, but here he goes in a fanatic, exclusive mood, where he says, of what use are then the many other asanas if you have Kevala Kumbhaka and Unmani Avashta and they come without effort and so on. From a fanatic standpoint, it's of course true. So, by success, 42, Shloka 42, I will continue perhaps tonight. It's already 10:20, I will not go over 10:30 because I want you to go to bed at a reasonable time. But at least to finish Siddhasana. So he says, by success in Siddhasana alone, like forget the others, you just do Siddhasana as much as you can. The 3 bandhas, which is called Bandha Trayam, arise easily and the moon is obtained. The moon is Soma, the immortality. It's something which happens here in this part of the head and which is very mystically related to higher states of consciousness and to long life and health. So he says, if you do just Siddhasana, the 3 bandhas arise easily. What are the 3 bandhas? Everybody who does Agama, especially the Kundalini program, knows. There are 3 bandhas. There are about 10 bandhas defined in yoga, 10 techniques called bandhas, but out of them 3 have a hierarchical position to each other, and they are a system of 3. And they are Mula Bandha in Muladhara, Uddiyana Bandha in Manipura, and Jalandhara Bandha in Vishuddha. And these 3 bandhas, when you play with them in a certain way, they create a chain reaction. And he says that these 3 bandhas arise easily. He doesn't say that they are supplemented, that they are replaced. He says they arise easily. So it means you do Siddhasana, and then easily and naturally you start in Siddhasana to do Mula Bandha, Uddiyana Bandha, and the Jalandhara Bandha. And that becomes a prakriya, a form of kriya. It's the Bandha Trayam Prakriya, is the 3 bandhas, which can be very dangerous if it's done without instruction. Don't try it chaotically from the books, because it's a technique which can produce unexpected effects in Kundalini. And if you have the wrong diet, if you smoke tobacco or other things and so on, it can suddenly explode in your body and produce havoc. So consult somebody who knows about Kundalini before you start improvising. Otherwise, here in Agama, we teach you Siddhasana and the Bandha Trayam and how to combine them and that. And the last shloka which he consecrates to Siddhasana is number 43, and he says, there is no asana like Siddhasana, no kumbhaka like Kevala Kumbhaka, like when the breath stops. There is no mudra like Kechari Mudra, and there is no laya like that of nada, listening to the nada, to the inner sounds. Other yoga texts, they would add here, and they would say there is no bandha like Uddiyana Bandha. Uddiyana Bandha is put on this list, like the foremost technique in each category of yoga. Here you have 4 of them. And it says in asanas, the king of the asanas is Siddhasana. In pranayama, the king is Kevala Kumbhaka, which means when you stop your breath. In mudras, the king is the Kechari Mudra, the one with the tongue, which is a very radical mudra and very difficult to fathom in many respects. And finally, he says there is no laya like the laya of the inner sound. We teach these things. I personally don't teach Kechari Mudra because I didn't practice it in my life, but all the rest of the things we teach. And in the level number 4, you already learn about Laya Yoga with the inner sound, how to produce the inner sound with the help of a mantra, and how to listen, melting into that inner sound, which is called the Laya Yoga with sound. And that is he gave some superlatives, again with the purpose of telling you that there is no asana like Siddhasana. The foremost of all asanas for him, for Svatmarama, is Siddhasana. I hope this list has taught you something. And then afterwards, he's going to teach 3 more asanas. I will not do it tonight because it's late enough. You've had your fill. It's been a dry session where I've just been going through asanas, but I hope you got impressed by the mystical. What do they understand from Mayurasana? What do they see in Siddhasana? Because in a text of Hatha Yoga, Siddhasana is a real boring asana. But for him, it's exactly the other way around. There is no asana like Siddhasana. Because Hatha Yoga is not about how acrobatic an asana is or how flexible you have to be when you do it. It's the spiritual effect. And the spiritual effect, for him, the best is in Siddhasana. And as you are going to see, the second best is in Padmasana, the lotus pose. These are the real big asanas. In Shiva Samhita, they speak only about these 2. They don't even bother with the rest. It's not a text of asanas, that one. So we will stop here, and next time when we continue, we will have Padmasana, Bhadrasana, and Muktasana. And then after that, we finished with the asanas. He will tell you something about diet. It's interesting because he mixes some beautiful things from Ayurveda. It's the only text which goes there, a bit in Geranda Samhita, those of you who remember. There he said about don't eat food which is over-rotten, over-fermented, stinking, this and that. And here, Svatmarama has a few shlokas where he says, because he said, people who practice moderation in diet. Then he feels obliged to tell you, look what I meant by that. Because I gave it as being so important, this is what I mean by it. So he will give, after these asanas, a few shlokas about what a healthy diet is from his standpoint. And that will conclude the chapter number 1, which is the chapter about asanas. And in chapter number 2, we'll talk about pranayama. In between the lines, you could see here already that for him pranayama means to control the prana. It's not about oxygenation or oxygenating tissues. That again is a collateral secondary effect, which is very good, very healthy, but pranayama is not about oxygenating tissues, as well as asanas are not about aligning joints and muscles. All those are the materialistic, primitive interpretation of what Hatha Yoga is, but Hatha Yoga originally was based on energies and functioning of the mind. I think it is enough for tonight because this has been dense and so many techniques. And in my opinion, it has something dry to just sit there and listen to so many techniques being explained. In the classes in Agama, of course, you do these techniques, and it's a completely different thing when you are hands-on and you are practicing these things. Enough for tonight. Thank you all for joining, and see you in our next satsang, whenever that will be, about continuing our readings from Hatha Yoga Pradipika. Enough for tonight.